Hello everyone, I'm Blaine Schanfelt. I'm on the SRE team at Instacart, and with me today is Dragan Rakas from the test automation team. At Instacart, our test automation team builds the foundations, tools, and frameworks that support code as it's developed. On the SRE team, we help see that code through to production, ensuring availability and reliability for our customers. Today, we'll talk about our growth at Instacart and how software quality and observability have become critical to our success and growth strategy. On the agenda today, we'll introduce the problems we're trying to solve, as well as the solutions we've built at Instacart to address these problems. The focus will be on how we measure progress made towards building high-quality applications, as well as how we communicate quality metrics through the organization. So isn't it enough to simply have tests? Why do we need to measure software quality? And why is it important to track changes in software quality? Well, for one, nobody plans or expects pandemic scale growth. We've had many engineering challenges as we work to keep our service stable. This year, we've seen significant changes in traffic, and these changes have multiplied several other metrics as well. We've seen a 500% increase in order volume, 7 times the number of daily app downloads, over 2 times the number of daily builds, and we also do over 1,000 deployments per day. The COVID-19 pandemic has caused us to respond quickly, adapt, build, and release several new features, including Leave at My Door and ASAP time slots. We also have over 300,000 shoppers now using our app. As you can see, we deploy to several environments hundreds of times per day. So how do we create reliable code supporting faster development? Fast release cycles can cripple software quality, and we'll need a test automation solution. But we also need to make sure we're heading in the right direction long term. To accommodate this growth, we've built an in-house testing framework called Mango to help us deliver quality software. Dragan, do you want to show us Mango?
Sure, Blaine. So Mango is Instacart's in-house test framework. We've sort of scoured the web looking for a publicly available open source test framework, but we weren't able to find something that explicitly suits our needs, so we've decided to build something in-house. At a high level, what Mango really tests is the service API. If you guys are familiar with the testing triangle, unit tests should typically make up the majority of the quality gating set in place. They're fast, they're cheap. In general, unit tests are great. And we have plenty of unit tests at Instacart. UI tests generally shouldn't be focused on as much because they're slow, expensive. It takes a long time to fire up a browser and execute all that JavaScript code with every user interaction. So really the service API layer is the sweet spot and really our next step towards achieving extremely high product quality. What Mango really is at the end of the day, it is a repository that publishes a Docker image. So the Docker image is the artifact of the test framework, and the test framework is embedded inside the image as a Python-based test suite. And we've been leveraging PyTest as our test framework of choice. We also have several integrations with both Datadog as well as AWS for metrics publishing, reporting, publishing our container or our images rather, and so on. So where does this image actually get used? When engineers submit pull requests and they merge their pull requests, every time they push some code, we need to have some test automation workflow in place. Similarly, every time we do a deployment to a UAT environment, Canary environment, and production as well, we really want to take advantage of the test automation workflow. And as a result, we have our own internal build orchestrator, the Instacart Software Center, which picks up commits and deployments and schedules a test run. And at that point, the Mango framework really gets to run all of its tests. Once all of the tests are done, we collect as many metrics as we can and then subsequently publish them over to Datadog and S3. One approach that has substantially made our product code much more testable is by building fixture endpoints within the product code bases. So now there's two code bases, one with one product code base and an automation code base that Mango executes. By creating a custom endpoint that's accessible only internally by the tests, it really makes the product much more testable. And the reason for that is it addresses one key issue that we have, which is test data. And as you know, Instacart works a lot with products. And product, for example, discount codes expire and discount codes come up all the time. So we really need some kind of endpoints to facilitate testing, and that has been a huge win for us by adding these endpoints and leveraging them in our automation code base. So now that we went through some of the architecture of Mango and how it runs and when it runs, what are we measuring? We do publish metrics to Datadog and S3, but what are we measuring? At a high level, Instacart, at least on the infrastructure side of things, we're very interested in optimizing for these 4 key Accelerate metrics. If you haven't heard of Accelerate before, it's an excellent book. I put in a footnote there of the authors and the book title. The 4 key metrics that are recommended are deployment frequency, lead time for code changes, time to restore a service, as well as the change failure rate. Now, the 2 metrics that Mango really impacts is the lead time for changes as well as the change failure rate. The lead time, how long code takes to go from commit to production, Mango really makes an impact here because on several stages of the pipeline, we previously required some manual intervention. And as you can imagine, when you deploy to a particular environment and you need to have some manual intervention, it really makes that lead time much longer from commit to production. By introducing these automated tests, we've been able to reduce our lead time a fair bit. Similarly, the change failure rate. So once something does make it to production, what percentage of those deployments require a hotfix or a rollback? So that's a quality metric we take a look at. And as you can imagine, once you run your test suite, if you do need to require a hotfix or a rollback, that's a very, very easily capturable metric. Now, what metrics do we capture from our test suite in particular? We capture the test status, the test duration, the number of test cases aggregated by team, product, and which GitHub contributors added those tests. The number of bugs that have been logged in Jira is a very relevant one, and also code coverage. So a little bit on code coverage. While we use code coverage as a guideline, it is not an end-all, be-all type of metric. We primarily use code coverage to identify gaps in testing. Maybe we missed some edge cases, and also to identify technical debt. We measure tech debt in a way where, let's say you have all of your user workflows automated. And if all of your user workflows are automated, and you check the coverage report and you suddenly see, oh, there's a bunch of code that never runs, but we have a complete automation test suite. Well, maybe we should look at that code, and it might be code that actually never ends up running. It's a waste of resources, and we may as well sometimes even delete that code. And lastly, static analysis reports. So we have lines per class, lines per function. We've all seen code bases with classes that have thousands of lines of code. And we really want to use our static analysis reports as a guideline to improve the overall code quality. It's not a hard line where, oh, if you exceed X number of lines per class, everything fails. It's more like, hey, it's a warning, please take a look. We also capture several statuses within Mango. So looking at a test case from a test case lifecycle perspective, most tests are actually passing, right? When you merge a new test, it's passing until something goes wrong and the test case fails. So now, really what we try to optimize for is the failure portion of it. We would like developers to be able to quickly action and troubleshoot on test failures, and we need some kind of process to prevent like 100 developers trying to investigate the same failure. So our solution to that is PyTest has the ability to exfil a test case, and once you create a Jira ticket that kind of summarizes your failure, oh, this feature is failing due to a bug or for whatever reason, you can mark your test case as a known issue or an exfil test, so others don't have to redo the same investigation that you did. Now, of course, once this ticket gets prioritized and fixed, this test case that's been exfiling now moves over to the xpassed column. And at that point in code, you've created an annotation to mark your test case as an X failure, and then once the ticket gets fixed, you just remove the marking and the test is back to passing. Great, so we went through a whole bunch of metrics. We went through publishing them, but how are we actually displaying those metrics? So this is really where the dashboarding part comes into play. And really one of the most important parts of Mango. So for example, we have maybe a lot of retailer environments. So I put in a snippet from my dashboard where we have retailers avocado, retailer watermelon, strawberry, raspberry, and so on. And these retailers each have their own test results. So you can see the number of test cases that have passed, failed, X-failed, and X-passed. So from a top-level perspective, maybe you're a VP, a director, a manager, you might be interested to see what does an overall quality what does the overall quality look like across all of our environments. And you can see here at the top that avocado has 13 tests failing, so perhaps there's some kind of integration on the avocado retailer that might have gone wrong. Now digging in further, this is not as helpful to an engineer as it is to a manager. So to an engineer, you'd want to be able to drill down into a particular environment's test results. And you can do that through another dashboard or another part of that dashboard, where you can see a detailed overview by feature of which tests failed. So in this example, looking into Raspberry's test results, we have 67 tests passed, 4 tests X-failed, and 1 test X-passed. As a reader of this particular dashboard, we can see that the list products feature has 1 X-failed test case, and to us, as a reader, that means that there is an outstanding known issue related to this feature. So you can get a good sense of health for features across our entire product. And lastly, and most importantly, as an engineer, I want to be able to drill down into each test failure. So for retailer Raspberry again, we have an example table here of 2 test cases, tests that a user can create an order and cancel an order. And both of these tests are failing with an associated request ID. So remember, these are API tests, and what we did on the Mango framework was every single API request is attached a request ID, and then as soon as a single API request fails, a corresponding test case fails, and then we can publish the corresponding request ID over to Datadog. And through this request ID, it's very easy to do a lookup on various APMs or logs or whatnot to investigate. So really the goal here is we don't want engineers to keep running the tests to reproduce a failure. We want to give engineers just enough information to troubleshoot failures. And lastly, the last column here, you can see the number of retailers that that are affected by this failure. So if not just Raspberry, but 14 other retailers get affected, then we know that this failure is happening quite frequently across many other environments. So we would prioritize the one that's failing for 14 over the one that's failing for 1 for investigation. And lastly, we want to encourage our engineers, our team members to action on these test failures by notifying them. In our case, we have notifications via Slack. So a particular owner of tests subscribes to notifications. And for example, here you have notifications for 4 different environments: pomelo, avocado, watermelon, and strawberry. And you can clearly see that avocado has a test failing. And we have the owner that gets notified. It's just an @Slack group. And then there's a drop down of potential action items that the owner can fill in, which we further collect more metrics against. So that's great. We have a whole bunch of dashboarding, troubleshooting workflows in place. But remember, Mango hasn't always existed. Instacart's been around for a long time, but Mango has not. So an important part of that is driving adoption and onboarding engineers to also contribute towards Mango. So really, it's about spreading the culture of quality. We want to have things like onboarding sessions with new hires. It's very important to kind of encourage that culture of quality from the very beginning of someone's tenure at Instacart. Similarly, for existing teams, we want to have very hands-on, very involved workshops that gives engineers some exposure and also gets them set up with Mango and contributing tests. Lastly, we also want to have people pick up information through osmosis. So now whether that's tech talks, lunch and learns, blog posts, or whatever medium, we really want to try to get the framework out there and encourage people to learn more about it. And lastly, we also publish contributor metrics. So what that really means is you have a pull request to the master branch, you merge some tests, we keep track of which GitHub contributors are merging tests. And what that really means is that we want to encourage the top contributors that raise our quality bar. So on Datadog, we have a dashboard, which is like a top contributor dashboard that really highlights and recognizes our top contributors that raise the quality bar. And there's great ways of disseminating that information through one thing that works really well is setting up a TV around the office and have that TV kind of display that dashboard, or maybe an all-hands meeting that kind of has a snippet of, well, for the month of June 2020, here are our top contributors. And then others kind of take a look at that dashboard, they recognize each other, and it really creates a culture of everyone kind of wants to contribute.
Thanks, Dragon. As you can see, we're planting the seed of quality today in order to grow in a broader organizational culture of quality. So far, Mango is built into about half our applications, and it's still new, but it's already helping us take the next step towards our software quality goals. We also want to make improvements towards a more seamless developer experience. Ideally, a single command will get engineers set up with a testing environment. We've also learned a lot along the way. We've already seen the fruits of our labor. Efficient tooling is just the foundation, but don't forget, time still needs to be set aside to write tests. Nobody wants their tests to fail, but in a demanding environment, it's easy to take shortcuts, and Mango helps make testing easy. We also want engineers to focus time on writing quality software. That means we need to make test metrics and reports easily accessible, and that will feed the cycle towards better code. If you find these challenges interesting as well, feel free to reach out to Dragon or myself, or check us out at instacart.com/careers. Thank you, everyone.